All right, so I looked over the test, and for some reason, a few of the questions are the same. So don't be surprised if you see a few of the questions twice. Okay. Somehow I must have, when I did the test, I must have picked a question, and then later I forgot that I picked that question and I repicked it. So yeah. So if you get it right the first time, chances are you're gonna get it right the second time. Just don't get it wrong, because you're gonna do it twice. Or you could, just balance it in. Hey, this time I picked this answer, that time I picked that answer, that's gonna cover all my bases. Anyway, so just wanted to let you know that I'll be here tomorrow, and on Wednesday. I'm just not gonna have office hours on Thursday because that's the day of the test. So Thursday, the test becomes available at 6 in the morning, and you can take it until Friday at midnight. Same deal as with first test, 25 multiple choice questions. Do not exit the test until you're done with it. Okay, so now for the review. Folks, you're gonna see a number of questions where Edward, you may wanna check out, because I told the other people that some of the questions are repeating within the test, so you're gonna have, so that's my fault. Anyway, a number of questions where I may give you the MPC or the MPS, and then I tell you that there's an increase in government spending, or there's an increase in investment, and to calculate what is going to be the change in the GDP. So remember that any increase in government spending, or an increase or in investment, or an increase in net exports, or an increase in consumption, autonomous consumption, any of those times the spending multiplier will result in a change in the GDP. So if the increase in, let's say there's an increase in investment of 100. And then I tell you that the MPS is equal to 0.2. Then what is the change? What is going to be the final change in the GDP? And you got to realize that the formula for this spending multiplier, you can either do it as 1 divided by MPS, or you can do it as 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. Either one will result in the same value for the spending multiplier. In this case, since I gave you the MPS, you're going to say, okay, so it's 1 divided by 0.2. 1 divided by 0.2 is equal to 5. So 100 times 5 equals 500. So the change in GDP equals 500. 100 times 5. In one particular problem, I say that the economy saves 20% out of each additional dollar. Well, what did I give you when I said that the economy saves 20% of each additional dollar worth of income? What did I give you there?
The MPS?
MPS, exactly. So I gave you the MPS. The MPS is equal to 0.2. If I had said that the economy consumes 90% out of each additional dollar's worth of income, then you would have said Well, you gave us the MPC. MPC equals 0.9. So MPS, how much you save out of additional dollar worth of income. MPC, how much you consume. And MPC plus MPS, they always add up to 1. So if 1 is 0.9, if MPC is 0.9, MPS is 0.1. If MPC is 0.75, MPS is equal to 0.25, and so on. Okay. So you're going to have a number of problems like this where there's a change in investment, there's a change in government spending. That change is going to get multiplied by the multiplier. Okay. Are you comfortable with this? Okay, good. Very good. Now,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Isn't the MPS supposed to be a number less than 1?
Yes. MPS plus MPC equals 1.
Okay.
So if we consume out of additional dollar worth of income, if we consume 90 cents, what happened to the remaining 10 cents?
Is saving.
Exactly. If you consume 90, that means that you got to save 10. If you get an extra dollar's worth of income and you consume 80 cents, that means that you put aside 20 cents. If you consume 70 cents, you put aside 30 cents. So MPC plus MPS always add up to 1. Okay, now, what are examples of, well, fiscal policy? Fiscal policy involves what? 2 things that the government can do. Change, anybody?
In
Go
government
ahead.
spending?
Change government spending and or change.
The interest rate.
No,
Taxes.
that's monetary policy. Monetary policy. If you see an answer that says anything about changing interest rates or changing the money supply, eliminate it because that's monetary policy. We haven't done it yet. So it's change government spending and or changing
Taxes.
taxes. So taxes or spending. So if you see any questions that talk about, well, fiscal policy, which one of those represent fiscal policy? Well, if you see a change in taxes or you see a change in spending, that's going to be it. Now, there are 2 types of fiscal policy. One is expansionary, the other one is contractionary. Expansionary means that the government is trying to expand the economy. So the economy is in a recession and they're trying to grow the economy, to expand the economy. The other one is contractionary fiscal policy, and that's when the economy is operating beyond full employment, when the economy is too hot for its own good. So expansionary and contractionary. When the government pursues expansionary fiscal policy, they will either increase government spending and or lower taxes on us. So expansionary fiscal policy, they want to stimulate aggregate demand. They want to create more demand for goods and services because that's going to put people to work. If people want to buy more cars, more washer and dryers, more refrigerators, that's going to put people to work. And you can do that by government giving us more money in the form of lower taxes. or they can do it by the government itself spending more money, more missiles, more roads, more this and that, whatever. Doesn't matter, because this increase in spending creates more demand for goods and services. More ships have to be built, more motors have to be built. When the government orders a ship, a lot of firms are going to have to come up with new employees to create whatever motors are going in it, or however much steel is going into it, and so on. So those firms will have to hire additional workers. Those workers now, they're going to get an income, and they're going to start spending that would not have happened if not for this increase in government spending. So that's where we get that multiplier. Okay, now contractionary doesn't happen very often, because that's when the government is trying to slow down the economy to create less demand for goods and services, because they're afraid that the economy is too hot, it's too good. It may lead to inflation. So then, to slow down the economy, they're going to reduce their spending and or increase the taxes. Okay. So when we're going to pursue expansionary fiscal policy, when we have an economy that looks like this. In other words, the economy is operating below full employment. So we have a recession because we're not operating at full employment. So that's when you're going to pursue an expansionary. When you're going to pursue a contractionary, when we have the following situation. Now, as you can see, the economy is actually operating beyond full employment. So here we have an inflationary gap or an expansionary gap. Either word is fine. An inflationary or an expansionary gap. Here we have a contractionary or a recessionary gap. So notice that to get rid of this contractionary gap, we need an expansionary fiscal policy. To get rid of this expansionary gap, we pursue a contractionary fiscal policy. So, because here we want to contract the economy, here we want to expand the economy. Thank you, James. Okay. Who is of the view that in the long run, everything will be fine? In the long run, the economy will be at full employment. Keynesian or classical?
Classic.
Classical. Well, very good. Classical. So classical view is of the long run. The long run is going to be okay. So Keynes looked at classical as the long run view. But they never mention how long is this long run, you know, because eventually we're all going to be dead. So don't tell me in the long run everything is going to be okay. So in the Keynesian view, Keynesian is the short run view. Classical long run, Keynesian short run. What does the aggregate supply curve look like in the Keynesian model? Can anybody tell me what does aggregate supply curve look like in the Keynesian model?
A horizontal line?
It's a horizontal line. So associate the Keynesian supply curve with a horizontal line. where changes in aggregate demand will not impact the price level, but will impact the GDP. In the classical model, we have the supply curve that is vertical. So any changes in aggregate demand will not impact the GDP, will not impact the economy, but will only impact the price level. So folks, which one of those views do we associate with sticky wages? Wages that do not adjust freely.
Keynesian?
Keynesian.
Very good. Keynesian. Keynesian. Yes. In the classical model, wages, prices are fully flexible. In the Keynesian model, wages are sticky downwards. In other words, if the economy goes into a recession, wages do not adjust downwards. Do you remember what prevented, under the Keynesian model, what prevented those wages from adjusting downwards? Long-term
Union contract.
Exactly, exactly. Long-term union contracts prevented the wages from going down. Very good. Folks, automatic stabilizers, they tend to stabilize the economy. How? One word, give me one word.
Unemployment.
Automatically.
Employment.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, it was the word that was after automatic stabilizers adjust the economy. Automatically. Automatic stabilizers do not require the intervention of Congress because they take place automatically. When the economy is booming, it's going to take money away from us. When the economy is stumbling, it's going to give money back to us. And the examples that I gave you were unemployment compensation and to the progressive tax system. Because remember, unemployment compensation, when are you parting with that money? When are you giving that money away? When you are working or not working?
You're working.
Working, exactly. So when times are good, you are paying into this. So it takes money away from you, money that you would otherwise spend. So it slows down a little bit the economy. But when times are tough and people start losing their jobs, now they're getting some money back, money that they would not be able to spend if not for those payments. So it makes the good times not quite as good and the bad times not quite as bad. Take money away from us, give money back to us. So it stabilizes a little bit the economy. Not a great deal, but a little bit. All right. So folks, let's suppose that the intersection of short-run aggregate supply and aggregate demand takes place at a point that is beyond full employment GDP. what should the government do to taxes in order to move the economy to full employment?
Raise taxes?
Raise taxes, raise taxes. So if we have a situation like this, so even though on the test, you're not gonna see a graph because I could not transfer the graphs from the test bank onto Canvas. It's impossible. So you're gonna see it in words like I said it to you just a few seconds ago. If the intersection of short-run aggregate supply and aggregate demand takes place at a point that is beyond full employment GDP, and we know that the long-run aggregate supply is the yardstick that we use to find where full employment GDP is, well, then this economy has an inflationary gap, and then the government would want to act in ways to slow down the economy, to diminish aggregate demand. And that would be accomplished by, one, lowering government spending, or, like Edward said, raising taxes. Okay. Now, if the problem had said the intersection of short-run aggregate supply and aggregate demand takes place below full employment GDP, what should the government do? Then in that case, you would say, well, increase government spending or lowering taxes. Either one of those two would be the correct answer. And obviously, if the intersection of short-run aggregate supply and aggregate demand takes place at full employment, what should the government do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing, because the economy is operating at full employment. This intersection tells us where the economy is operating, and this guy here tells us where full employment is. And if the intersection of short-run aggregate supply here and aggregate demand takes place at full employment, then obviously at that point, the government shouldn't do anything. Okay. Who do we associate laissez-faire economics with? Which economic school of thought?
Classical.
Yes, classical. Very good, classical. You're right. So
Excuse me,
Keynesians.
can you repeat the question? I didn't get the question.
I had asked, who do we associate laissez-faire economics? Laissez-faire means leave it alone. Okay, let it be. And that's associated with classical. On the other hand, if you have a school of economic thought that involves government intervention, that's usually going to be associated with Keynesian economics. Okay, now, let's say that we have a recessionary or a contractionary gap of 100 billion. And let's say that the MPC is equal to 0.9. By how much should government spending go up in order to close this $100 billion gap? So you tell me. Remember that the increasing government spending is going to get multiplied by the spending multiplier, and you know the formula, and that's going to have to close that $100 billion gap. And
10 billion?
10 billion, right. 10 billion. Because remember, you then say something like this. The change in government spending times the spending multiplier has to be equal to, we need to raise the GDP by $100 billion, the size of the gap. So it's equal to 100 billion. The spending multiplier I can calculate in using the formula 1 divided by 1 minus MPC, right? So this guy is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus MPC equals 1 divided by 1 minus 0.9 equals 1 divided by 0.1 equals 10. So the change in government spending times 10 equals 100 billion. Therefore, the change in government spending has got to be equal to $10 billion. Okay. Folks, if the marginal propensity to consume goes down, what happens to the multiplier? If the MPC goes down in value, just think what's going to happen to the multiplier. Is it going to go up or down? Because obviously it's not going to stay the same.
Goes down.
It goes down, right? Because you can just give yourself an example. You don't have to do it in your head. Just give yourself an example. Say, well, if it's 0.9, it's 10. Let's make it smaller. What if it's 0.5? It goes down from 0.9 to 0.5. Well, let's see what the multiplier would be. 1 divided by 1 minus 0.5. That is equal to 1 divided by 0.5, which is equal to 2. Oh, so it went from 10 to 2. Yeah. One of the problems with fiscal policy is that it takes a long time to impact the economy because there are some time gaps. There's the recognition time gap, the implementation time gap, and the effect time gap. What did I call them? Because I don't think that the recognition time gap, can somebody else tell me how I call the other
Time
two?
lags?
Pardon me?
Is it time lags or
Time lags, right.
Recognition, action, and effect.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, recognition, action, and then effect. It takes a while before we realize that, hey, the economy is stumbling. That's the recognition. Then it takes a long time to decide on how we're gonna what kind of fiscal policy? Is it increased government spending? Is it reducing the taxes? Is it some combination of the two? You know, we have two political parties and they're gonna disagree on this, and it may take some time before they can reach a decision. Okay, and then once the policy is implemented, then the effect is how long does it take to actually impact the economy? So those are some problems that have to do with fiscal policy. When we're gonna go on after test 2, we move on to monetary policy. Well, guess what? With monetary policy, all the Fed, they have to do, the board of directors, the board of governors, they get together, they raise the interest rates or lower the interest rates just like that. Takes place instantaneously. Here, they don't take place instantaneously. But we're going to see that there are problems with monetary policy too. It's not that it's, because if it was working just like that, guess what? We wouldn't have any recessions because monetary policy would take care of it. Well, it's not that easy. But if you see an answer that talks about fiscal policy, and then you see changing the interest rates or changing the money supply, eliminate those answers automatically. That's got to do with monetary policy. I know that, you know, when we think of monetary, Federal Reserve, you think that it's part of the government, but it actually is not part of the government. Okay, it's a quasi-private public institution. So, but for now, don't worry about that, you know. Okay, so basically that's about the review. I mean, again, you're gonna see some of the questions that are repeating themselves. I apologize for that. Answers will be available on Saturday. You're gonna, as soon as you turn in the test, you're gonna get your grade. But then the answers will be available on Saturday morning. Then on Monday, we're gonna go over this test. So I'm gonna have a review, but the review is basically going over the test. Okay, and which will be taped like always. And then next week, Thursday and Friday, for those of you who want to take the makeup exam, there's going to be a makeup exam available. Also, you don't have to take the makeup exam. And one more thing that I want to stress, and I apologize for this, it's Canvas, and I don't know how to take care of the problem. Let's say you take the first test, and then you take the makeup exam. For some reason, Canvas averages the two tests and is going to put down the first score and then the average. No, don't worry about it. I have access to both scores, and I will only take the higher of the two. So you may see it in your grades as an average, but I have the two scores and I take only the higher of the two. So if you have a 92 and an 88, let's say you scored 92 and 88, and then you see that there's an 80, 92 and 88, it's a 90, I'm sorry. And you see a 90, no, it's 92. Got it?
How many
Okay.
questions on the exam?
25. 25. So I'll be available for you guys every morning. Well, today we just did this, but I'll be available Tuesday, tomorrow, and I'll also be available on Wednesday. Not on Thursday. Thursday is test time, so I'm not available. So you want to show up for office hours at 10:30? You're very welcome. You have any questions? And I actually prefer, if you could make the office hours, I would rather answer your questions like this than having to type. You know, I'm not a great typist, so. But you're welcome to email me, and I will make the effort to type, okay? But I'd rather you do it here. All right. Questions, comments? Are you okay? Preguntas. Good. Well, then all I can say is if you have any questions, stick around. Otherwise, have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna post it after everybody's gone.